Hello again, this is a Chapter 12 video. We're going to be looking at an internal and external view of the address book version 1. Now this class, remember, or this project, doesn't use any error checking or any parameter checking or any dealing with exceptions. Those are done later with the classes shown there, the version 2 and the address book IO. So let's start to have a look at this address book version 1. So it's made up of 4 classes. The address book GUI deals with all aspects of the GUI representation of the address book. The whole address book is really based on the contact details object, where you can store a number of fields relating to a contact. Those contact details are then stored in an address book class, and the relevant adding and removing of those contact details are stored in there. This is all then used within the address book demo, where the address book GUI is created and the parameter of an address book class or address book type is given to the address book GUI, and then that runs the whole thing up. Just before we get started, it is fair to note so that the dealing with the GUI and the dealing with the actual structure is pretty good in this application, in that everything to do with the address book is stored in the address book class. The address book GUI doesn't really do anything in terms of address book stuff, which is how we want it. We want to completely separate how the GUI is created and how the actual functionality of the program. The two shouldn't really link together. I should be able to take that address book class and put it into another GUI, and it should perform the same way. So let's have a look at the address book demo first of all. So here we have our address book. The first tab is the search entries. So what I can do here is I can put in a single letter, and that will bring back a search based on the David in the search there. The other thing I can do, which is quite clever in this one, is I can search based on number as well. So if I type in 0845993, then I will get back John's details there. So we've got 2 methods of search there. We're actually searching on the phone number and searching on the name. So bear that in mind when we look into the classes later. We then got 3 fields to add in some new details. So we can add in just a quick tester here. Add those in, list the entries, give them a list, and then we can see our sort of quick entrance at the top there. So that's really all the class does. It's pretty neat though in the way that it uses the buttons, and it's quite a quick way of working and creating an address book. This search of the entries is similar to your mobiles in that you can search your own phone books based on the number as well as being based on the name. So that's a functionality which you should be fairly used to. So let's have a look at the contact details class. Made up of 3 fields, pretty straightforward at that point. And constructor makes sure that any of the objects passed to it are not null. If those objects are null, then it just creates an empty string within the object. A number of getters there, which don't do anything too clever. We've got an equals method which has been overridden from the object class. Now we've got a compare to method here. Now the reason why we have that compare to, I'll just show you. At the top here, because we want to have contact details generally in order, and if you want to use any objects or classes where you want to keep those objects in a particular order, then it's often useful to implement the comparable interface. Now what you can do with this comparable interface is then you can compare order, so you can base the order on not only one thing but a few things, and in this case we base it in the order which is shown in the fields there, so we base the order on name, phone and address. So if you implement the comparable interface, then you must use the compare to method which is shown there. Now in order to use so you can look at that in the API if you want to check that, but if in order to use that interface, then you must use this method. What this method does is it will then return, as it says on the screen there, it will return a negative integer if the object comes before the parameter, 0 if they're the same, and positive if it comes after the object. So that's a little comparer. Now in this particular project we don't use the compare to method, but it's worth bearing in mind for future classes which you create. We then override the toString method, which you should be pretty comfortable with at this point, and then because we override the equals method, remember, it's good practice once to override that is to use the hash code and to override the hash code method from object. So there's some details there of what's going on there, where it does some details on the overriding of hash code. So that's our contact details. That's what it's basically made up of. We've then got the address book class. Now the address book class effectively stores a tree map of the contact details. So we can see here, if you're interested in tree map, then have a look up at the tree map. The tree map is based on a red-black algorithm of storing objects in a particular tree format. Again, you can abstract yourself away from this, just understand that it's stored and that works. Or if you want to look into tree maps, then have a look at the API and then a further look into the red-black trees. When we do create our address book, then we just do an assignment there, and we create our number of entries as 0. We've got a pretty simple getter at this point, where we specify a key, and then we return the contact details which are based on that key. We've got another method here which you're going to use a lot more when you do your error checking and parameter checking later on. This is the key in use method. So this key in use will check to see if a key is in use before it then uses it as a search, or it uses it to return a particular contact detail. Now we've got a method here which is the add details. Now you'll see here that we've got two put methods in here, where you might think you'd only have one. So the reason why we have two here is because of that functionality where you saw previously, which is the name is used to search as well as the number. So what we do is we actually put in two values for each person. We put in a value where their key is based on their name, and then we put in the value where their key is based on their phone number. So in our actual tree map, we've actually got two elements for each contact detail. We've then got a change details method here, which will take a parameter of old key and details, and then change that based on that. We've then got a search method. Now the search method is pretty neat in the way it works, and it uses lots of different kinds of sets in here. So we've got a list, which is our list of matches. We've then got our sorted map, and then we're using our iterator. Now there's some different methods in here. You can have a look if you want to into how this search method works, or you can just assume that the search method does work and you can abstract away from it. But there's some interesting bits here. The link list, so this is implements a doubly link list, which you can look into, which is basically lists which can be linked from both ways, and you can look into those linked lists if you like. There's also the sorted map, which is used there, and then we've also got the iterator, which you'll have seen previously. That then returns an array of contact details based on a particular search string. We then got a getter for the get number of entries, a remove details method, which you're going to come across. I think we looked in a previous video, the remove details method, and how you're going to need to check parameters in that. We've then got a list details method. Now the list details method, as it says here, because each entry is stored under two keys, it's necessary to build up a set of the contact details. This eliminates duplicates. If you remember, when you use sets, you cannot have duplicates in those sets. So by building up a set, all the duplicates you have, so you'll always have a duplicate. You'll always have at least one duplicate in this particular implementation. So once you build up that set, you will eliminate those duplicates. And then this gives a full list of the details, and it returns a string of all of those details. So that's the address book class. The address book demo, again, it has a single field, or two fields, but one of them is the book, which is of the address book, and then the address book GUI. Now it's pretty clever in that it just deals with all of this itself, so it creates all its contact details using the address book, and again it doesn't do any functionality here. All it does is adds those contact details. It then Using the interact, which is the GUI, it then uses the book as the parameter for that and creates that GUI based on that. We then got a couple of basic ones, which is a show interface and then something which returns the actual book if you wanted to use that particular method. I don't think that is used though when we use this. So that's the application. The main part of this exercise and the main part of this chapter is going to be look at error checking and parameter checking within address book and within contact details. Later we're going to look, as discussed previously, about we're going to look at the I/O and the version 2, and that will be how you implement error checking and dealing with exceptions. Okay, I will see you in the next video.